You are listening to 600 Second Saga. Today's feature is State of the Union by Michael Haynes. President McAllen checked his watch. Any second now, Karen Underhill, his chief of staff, would enter the Oval Office. "I've got the information you requested, Mr. President," Karen said as she bustled in, carrying a tablet computer. She sat down and glanced at him. "You look exhausted, sir. Are you sure you wouldn't rather do this tomorrow? There's no rush." Yes, she would think that. "No, Karen. Show me what you've got. It's just been a long day." "I can imagine. At least the State of the Union only happens once a year." He grimaced and then forced it into a smile. "Thank God for that. Let's get down to business. How did it go?" Karen pulled up a video of his speech from earlier that evening. The early portion received an excellent reaction from the focus group. She skipped ahead to where he listed his administration's major accomplishments from the past year. "Right now, almost 75% were reacting favorably to you." She looked up. "That's remarkable, sir, especially with a focus group this large." McAllen nodded. Fine. So did I keep the 75% of them happy throughout the speech?" "Well, no, sir. The first big downtick comes here." The tiny McAllen on screen spoke about the need to reduce dependency on grain imports by removing subsidies on domestic growers of biofuel crops. This was especially unpopular with people self-identifying as being budget-conscious. Interviews indicated concerns about rising energy prices. McAllen closed his eyes briefly. He reworked that part so many times. He wondered if the speech would be better without any reference to the topic. "Your numbers ticked back up when you mentioned your tax cut proposals," Karen said. "Of course, everyone loves tax cuts." "Not quite everyone. There were some who viewed it as a political ploy for your re-election bid." A classic case of not being able to please everyone all the time. Callan glanced at his watch again. Almost 11:30. He was cutting it close. "Tell you what, Karen. It's late. Tell me this. What was my final approval number?" She'd make a lousy poker player. McAllen knew even before she'd answered it wasn't good news. 53, sir." "Damn, 5 points down from last time." McAllen passed a hand over his face. He had to concentrate. "When did I lose the most support?" "There were 2 times. Let me find the first one." She forwarded through much of his speech. McAllen watched himself nod and gesture and point and shake his head in quintuple time. The image slowed. "While I know there is still dissension within the legislature," the McAllen on the screen said, "regarding proposals for regulation of time travel research, let me be clear. I will not endorse any law sanctioning research in this field." Half of the audience sprang up with cheers. Some others booed. Many looked on in silence. "This is a position from which I will not bend," he said over the crowd. "There's too much at stake. It's an idea fraught with risk. And," he slapped the podium to punctuate his words, "I will not support it." She paused the video. Sentiment was tracking up at first. "Your position is reasonably popular, but slapping the podium, people didn't like that. It was viewed as overly aggressive." McAllen sighed. That had been an impulsive decision, and apparently not a good one. "And the other time?" "It was when you misquoted the Declaration of Independence." "When I did what?" She had forwarded the video, and McAllen heard himself say not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but life, happiness, and the pursuit of liberty. "Just a slip of the tongue," he muttered. The fatigue was getting to him more than he realized. "The good news is you rebounded from there, gaining back 9 points by the end." 53%? "Yes, sir." He nodded. "Thank you, Karen. That will be all." She excused herself, leaving him alone. 53. It could be worse. But with how things looked to line up in November, with Senator Hodge a virtual shoo-in for the nomination to oppose McAllen, every voter mattered. he knew he could do better. Hell, he had done better. McAllen crossed the office and closed its door. From a locked cabinet, he pulled a device which, every time he saw it, made him think of a parachute. Was this really for the best? Time was running out. If he was going to act, it had to be now. Finally, he put his arms through the device's straps and cinched it tight. McAllen took a deep breath and pushed the device's control button. Frozen in place, he watched a ghost image of himself place the device in the cabinet and open his office door. Soon, Ghost Karen walked backwards into the room. He watched them lean over the table, dissect his speech. The fatigue in his eyes shocked McAllen. No wonder he'd stumbled over those famous words. The rest of the last 4 hours, always 4 hours, no more, no less, rolled back around him. Then, with a jolt, he was free. He checked his watch. 7:55, just enough time. A few minutes later, a Secret Service agent entered the room. "Ready to go, Mr. President?" McAllen nodded. "Yes, Brandt, let's do this." Brandt escorted President McAllen from the office, leading him to the motorcade which would take him to Capitol Hill, so he could give the State of the Union address for the 6th time that night. This was State of the Union by Michael Haynes, originally published in Space and Time magazine in 2016. Michael Haynes lives in Central Ohio, where he helps keep IT systems running for a large corporation during the day, and puts his characters through the ringer by night. An ardent short story reader and writer, Michael has had stories appear in periodicals such as Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, and Daily Science Fiction, and his work has also appeared in anthologies such as Deep Cuts, Not Our Kind, Tales of Not Belonging, and Quick Crimes. He is also the chair of the Cinevent Classic Film Convention, and enjoys photography, geocaching, and travel. His website is michaelhaynes.info, and he can be found on Twitter at mohio73. Check our show notes for links. Music is provided by Mads. Learn more about 600 Second Saga, our authors, how to submit your flash fiction, and how to support the podcast in the show notes. This has been Mariah Avix and 600 Second Saga.